Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, colleagues. Thank you so much for joining this webinar, an introduction to Cool Cities Lab, a platform for cities to assess heat risks and prioritize cooling solutions. It's really wonderful to see so many people joining from all over the world already. I'm going to give us a little bit more time just for a few more people to trickle in. Thank you so much for joining us and for being with us today for this 1-hour webinar to introduce Cool Cities Lab to you. I see that the numbers are trickling up again, so I think that we can get started here. Yeah, now that we have our quorum of people. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody again, and welcome to this webinar, and a belated happy Earth Day to everybody for yesterday. It feels appropriate for me that we're doing this webinar today after having celebrated Earth Day yesterday. This webinar is an introduction to Cool Cities Lab, a platform for cities to assess heat risks and prioritize cooling solutions. My name is John Rob Poole, and I'm a senior manager for nature-based urban development in World Resources Institute's Cities program, and I'm thrilled to be your MC today. It's really good to see so many people on the line already. Thank you for taking the time here. This webinar is hosted by World Resources Institute together with WRI Africa and WRI India, and in partnership with UNEP's Cool Coalition and Beat the Heat Initiative, and with generous support from google.org and Google Research. I'd love for you to also introduce yourselves, so please use the Q&A function to let us know who you are and which city or which organization you represent. You can see the instructions here on the slide. And I also encourage you throughout the webinar to use the Q&A box to share any questions that you have for our speakers and experts. We're going to try and respond to as many of them as we can during the webinar, some in writing, and some during the live Q&A towards the end of the webinar. So like I said earlier, it feels appropriate for us to come together to talk about how we can cool our cities, given our celebration of Earth Day yesterday. This is the second webinar of 2 designed to introduce WRI's Cool Cities Lab, which is a new open source data platform that helps cities baseline heat risks and simulate the modeled cooling capacity of different infrastructural cooling scenarios. The first webinar took place last week. It had the same structure and the same content as today's webinar, but it was timed for people who are in the Americas. And the recording from that webinar and from this webinar and the slides are all going to be made available to all of you on WRI's event page and WRI's YouTube channels. Next slide, please. In terms of the agenda, I'm going to pass it on to our esteemed guest, Dr. Elenio Mirivili, who's the Global Chief Heat Officer for UN Habitat and UN Environment Program, and a Senior Fellow at Atlantic Council's Climate Resilience Center. Elenio is going to provide us with opening remarks, and then we'll hear an introduction to and a demo of the Cool Cities Lab platform. We'll then have a moderated panel discussion with 3 inspiring leaders who are tackling urban heat through their work in and with cities, both at the state and the national, both at the city and the state and the national level, before moving to an audience Q&A session where I'll pose your questions to the experts and speakers joining us. We'll then conclude with some closing remarks and a few requests for all of you and a vote of thanks. So with that, Lenio, I'm pleased to hand it over to you for your remarks, to hear from your perspective about this urban heat agenda and about why having this discussion right now is important, and any calls to action or key takeaways you want to share with our attendees. Lenio, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, John Rob. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the World Resources Institute for your continued leadership on research and solutions for urban heat. It's a pleasure to join you all, colleagues, administrators, practitioners, policy and decision makers. We do have to keep coming together because, as we know, building heat resilience depends on coordination across sectors and across different levels of government if we want to be successful. Since we're all here, we know that extreme heat is rising, already shaping how thousands of cities operate today and how millions of people live day to day. And we also know that extreme heat is difficult to deal with. First of all, extreme heat is invisible in a predominantly visual culture, and invisible in its effects in many different in the many different ways that it affects our cities. And second, exactly because it's difficult to deal with, exactly because it is complex in the ways that it affects multiple urban systems and the ways that it interacts with other hazards like drought, fires, floods, and pollution. Third, heat risk is all about equity, which also makes it hard. It depends on socioeconomic conditions, which are reflected in urban form, as well as in buildings and infrastructure design and materials. Finally, heat resilience is hard to finance. It's not identified as a concrete and discrete urban budget or financial track. All of these factors create a real challenge for cities. How to identify priority areas and target the most efficient and effective and target them with the most efficient and effective interventions. Meanwhile, heat pressure is rising globally, really putting a lot of pressure on critical urban systems like energy, water, disruptions in productivity, real pressure on our health systems with increased morbidity and mortality. And these dynamics play very differently across regions around the world. In Africa, rapid urban growth intersecting with limited infrastructure and large data gaps is making risk harder to assess and manage. In Europe, cities that were not built for extreme heat are facing severe and frequent heat waves impacting vulnerable populations and severely impacting aging populations especially. In Asia, which is home for the most heat-exposed megacities globally, the combination of high temperatures and humidity is a super dangerous combo that is affecting labor, economic activity, food security, and of course, health. In different contexts, we have different effects, but we have a common shared need to better understand where the heat risks are concentrated and to align responses accordingly. The good news is that there is a positive momentum building up globally. Last September, for example, in COP30 in Belém, UNEP and the Brazilian co-presidency launched Beat the Heat, which is an initiative that marked a difference. More than 100 partners, including WRI, very different partners, from multilateral banks to high-tech companies, city networks, universities, and many heat solutions providers have stepped up, asking for more coordinated and implementation-focused support for cities. At the same time, 74 central governments and more than 230 cities joined as well. Beat the Heat focuses in supporting cities with data, technical capacity, peer learning, and access to finance. So in this context, tools like the Cool Cities Lab play a crucial role because it helps to translate goals and priorities into practical steps, supporting cities in assessing risk, identify where the action is most needed, and making informed decisions about interventions. This type of tools help cities clearly articulate their needs for technical support, for financing, and for solutions adapted to local conditions. As I work around the world, I see that there is really a strong case to be made for more clearly articulated demands for technical assistance that help build investment-ready projects. And this is true in different cities around the world. Also, a strong case to be made about sharing knowledge among cities and regions and practitioners, what worked and what didn't. We still need a lot of information to be exchanged. And finally, coordinating demand for funding and financing and making clear that there is urgent implementation needs at scale and not small little funding here and there. Let me close this very short introduction by thanking the organizers and all of the practitioners. I really hope this session will inspire practical action and strengthen global collaboration to address effectively and more equitably this pernicious threat, urban heat. Thank you very much, and back to you, John Robb.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Linneo. Thanks for setting the scene very clearly for us for this very compelling call to action. It's really always inspiring to hear the opportunity in your own words and really for this global community to have benefited from your steadfast leadership on this urban heat agenda for many, many years. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
I'm going to
John.
move on to my colleague, Dr. Ruth Engel. Ruth is a data science for environmental health and extreme heat in WRI's Cities program. And Ruth is going to provide us with a presentation introducing Cool Cities Lab and a demo of the platform. So Ruth, over to you, please.
Thanks, John Rob. So the data is clear. 2024 was the hottest summer on record across nearly every region of the globe. Urban areas are warming at roughly twice the global average, and that heat is not distributed equally. But the same characteristics that drive urban heat also present real opportunities for intervention through smarter urban design. Heat-resilient infrastructure, cool roofs, trees, shade structures, can measurably reduce harm. But scaling these solutions has proved difficult. Our user research found that 46% of urban heat decision makers don't have sufficient access to heat-related data. And even when data does exist, it's fragmented, hard to interpret, or disconnected from the planning decisions that actually matter. So we built Cool Cities Lab. It's designed around 4 principles: relevance, built on what planners and public health officials actually need; scalability, the same analytical framework can be deployed in any city worldwide; accessibility, it's built on open data and open source software so that methods are transparent and reproducible; and resolution, insights are derived at a human scale. Together, these factors give cities the evidence they need to act, to defend their decisions, and to build consensus across departments and decision makers. Cool Cities Lab was developed in close collaboration with city officials and chief heat officers worldwide. Cities are already applying it. Cape Town is identifying priority areas for cooling infrastructure. Rio de Janeiro is highlighting hyperlocal data in its low emission zone. Johannesburg is guiding tree planting, and Nairobi is integrating hazard, exposure, and vulnerability data into heat action planning. The tool was designed to be complementary and not duplicative with existing global initiatives from partners like the Cooling Coalition, C40, and Google. At its core, Cool Cities Lab is a decision support tool organized around real-world use cases. The tool allows you to explore baseline data, map priority areas for heat action, assess hyperlocal heat resilience, and model scenarios of heat-resilient infrastructure implementation. And then finally, estimate cooling potential. Together, they move cities from understanding risk to deciding where and how to act, to building the evidence base for investment. Let me walk through each briefly. The foundation is a rigorous baseline presented as 5 dimensions of heat risk across your city, seen here in Bhopal, India. Hazard, the intensity of heat; exposure, which populations and infrastructure are at risk; sensitivity, highlighting vulnerable groups who may experience heat differently; adaptive capacity, a community's ability to cope with heat; and infrastructure opportunity, cataloging existing assets like tree canopy and surface reflectivity that can be built upon. From that baseline, the tool shows priority geographies with risk and opportunity indices, again shown here in Bhopal. By overlaying the baseline dimensions of heat risk, Cool Cities Lab generates maps that give every stakeholder a shared, evidence-based starting point, clear enough to bring to a budget meeting or a funding proposal. Standard metrics like land surface temperature tell part of the story, but not what a person on the street actually experiences. And that's why Cool Cities Lab calculates the Universal Thermal Climate Index, or UTCI, seen here in Monterrey, Mexico, which integrates solar radiation, temperature, humidity, and airflow at 1 meter resolution. In practice, this means that the tool can show specific street feeling, nearly 9 degrees cooler under tree cover, the kind of specificity that actionably supports designing transit stops, siting cooling centers, and building the evidence base for health impact narratives. The final capability is where understanding turns into decision-making. Cool Cities Lab lets you model interventions and simulate their cooling impact. The current library includes street trees, shade structures, and cool roofs. The tool models realistic scenarios. For example, what if cool roofs were applied to all eligible buildings in a priority zone? What you're seeing here is a real cooling scenario from Cape Town, South Africa, where we've modeled adding trees so that every street reaches the level of the most tree-lined streets in the city. This increases tree cover by about 9 percentage points and reduces thermal stress by up to 9 degrees Celsius in shaded areas. We show estimated UTCI change and before and after comparisons, the kind of evidence that moves funding proposals forward and helps cities compare and sequence cooling investments with confidence. Cool Cities Lab is free, open, and ready to use, and we're actively building partnerships with cities, funders, and implementers. Whether you want to explore the tool for your city, collaborate on a pilot, or stay connected as we develop new capabilities, we do want to hear from you. Scan the QR code to access the tool or to sign up for updates, and reach out directly at citiesdata@wri.org. And with that, here's a demo I recorded yesterday so that you can see Cool Cities Lab in action. Welcome to WRI's Cool Cities Lab, which enables urban decision makers to assess heat resilience in their city and understand the potential cooling impacts of a range of solutions at both the neighborhood and the city scales. Select a city from either the drop-down menu or the map. Let's take a look at Cape Town, South Africa. The tool is organized around 4 capabilities: understanding heat baseline, mapping risks and opportunities, assessing cooling solutions, and evaluating the impacts of infrastructure scenarios. With the baseline layers, you can see locally contextualized spatial data on critical factors that contribute to risk and resilience for extreme heat in your city. You can also view statistics for a user-defined area of interest. The 5 dimensions of urban heat risk: hazard, exposure, sensitivity, adaptive capacity, and infrastructure opportunity provide a holistic view of current baseline conditions. The risk and opportunity section helps you quickly pinpoint where risks are high and cooling interventions can have the greatest impact. The index layers combine multiple baseline data sets to highlight 3 key things: where many people face high exposure and limited adaptive infrastructure, where there's strong potential to expand tree cover in the places people move through every day, and where cool roofs can be added in areas experiencing the most intense heat. Now that we have an idea about where we might want to target interventions, we can explore solutions. The Solutions Library allows you to choose between a selection of heat-resilient infrastructure scenarios and to explore the potential cooling impacts within high-priority neighborhoods. It also provides metrics that let you compare the scenarios to see how they help meet different cooling goals. Currently, solution analysis is available for about half the cities included in Cool Cities Lab. You can see that in Cape Town, while street trees have a stronger maximum effect on thermal comfort, cool roofs affect a larger area and have a stronger effect on air temperature. Let's take a closer look at the scenario that prioritizes street tree planting to protect pedestrians. Within this impact section, the baseline subsection allows you to see data layers and key metrics describing baseline thermal comfort for the city-defined area of interest. You can see that it feels much cooler in the shade of both buildings and trees. The action subsection shows details about how the addition of cooling infrastructure changes heat-related urban characteristics in the area. In this case, we've added trees so that these streets have about the same tree cover as the most tree-lined streets in the city. We can see that this increases tree cover by about 9%. And finally, we can look at how these new trees improve thermal comfort. You can see a substantial drop in heat stress wherever trees provide shade. It can feel up to 9 degrees cooler. And overall, temperatures in these pedestrian corridors are about half a degree cooler on average. Importantly, these benefits change throughout the day. CCL shows data at 3 p.m. when heat stress is at its peak. For more information about the metrics and data layers, you can easily view definitions. And you can always download geospatial layers, share your map, or print your map view. For more information, you can view a page about the methods or read the user manual. And you can contact the Cool Cities Lab team for more information or to add your city. We look forward to hearing from you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that really wonderful introduction to Cool Cities Lab and for the excellent demo, Ruth. And congrats on bringing Cool Cities Lab to life. I know how much you and others in the team have really personally invested over the past couple of years. So thanks for that. We're going to move on to the meaty part of today's webinar, everybody, which is the panel discussion. And I'm pleased to invite our esteemed panelists to join us on the virtual stage. So Dr. Joyce Kimutai, Joyce, if you can join us on the stage, and because we didn't have time to check with you that your audio is working, can I just do a quick audio check here? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Joyce. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. Joyce Kimutai is a climate scientist with Kenya's Meteorological Department. Welcome, Dr. Joyce. We also have Mr. Lokendra Thakur, who is the Chief Scientific Officer and Coordinator for Madhya Pradesh's State Knowledge Management Center on Climate Change. Mr. Thakur has many hats. Let me go through them. He's also the Director of Madhya Pradesh's State Wetland Authority, which is in the Environmental Planning and Coordinating Organization of the Environment Department of the Government of Madhya Pradesh. Welcome, Mr. Thakur. Thanks for joining us. And finally, we have Mr. Albert Ferreira, who is the Chief Heat Officer and the Risk and Resilience Manager for Resilience and Climate Change in the city of Cape Town in South Africa. So thanks for joining us, Albert. And our moderator, who is my colleague, Dr. Saif Shabu, who is a Senior Product Manager for Urban Data and Analytics in World Resources Institute's Cities program. So welcome all four of you. Please, if you can turn on your cameras and join me on the virtual stage here, that would be wonderful. I do want to flag that we heard from Mr. Thakur's team that there is a constraint on his time and he needs to run pretty soon to another urgent meeting. So Saif, we discussed going out of order during this panel discussion and potentially posing all of Mr. Thakur's questions to him first so that he can leave, and then moving on and bouncing questions between Dr. Joyce and Albert Ferreira. So Saif, please, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorab. And thank you, Ruth, for introducing Cool Cities Lab. It's a great demo. And thanks for the panelists to join us today. I'm really excited to moderate this session and to have the discussion with you. So just before we start, a kindly reminder for the panelists to stick to the time. Then we have enough time to answer the question in the QA. So as discussed with Jorab, so we start with the question to you, Mr. Thakur. So thank you for joining us. And want to know from the national perspective in India, how can tools like Cool Cities Lab be important for accelerating adoption of urban cooling solutions? And what gap do they feel for cities?
Thank you for inviting me for this very important discussions. In hot summer, we are going through very hot, extreme heat conditions right now in city of Bhopal and India. Many of regions are facing extreme heat conditions. So this discussion becomes even all the more important because what we are talking, we are also in a sense feeling and facing those situations. India has a India Cool Action Plan, if you know. So we have a national framework for addressing this issue. However, this initiative of the Cool Cities Lab is very important for us because it helps us to get the data. We know the solutions, but which solution will work better where? That is what this tool is helping us. We are working in 4 cities of Madhya Pradesh where we are developing the heat action plans, and these are the very important cities of the state of Madhya Pradesh, the metro cities, and this is where people are facing lots of heat conditions. So I would say that this particular support that has come from WRI and the using this Cool Cities Lab, this is very important for us. It is helping us to bridge the what we call the hyper local data, because we have the when it comes to heat, we don't have very granular data in state or in country. We sort of work on very coarse data. So tools like this will help us to get the granularity of the data and also bridge that data gap, because solutions are by and large known, but which solution will work where and with less cost. That is where this tools like Cool Cities Lab help us. So I would like to thank WRI for offering this support to us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tucker, for this answer. And yeah, I agree with you that the resolution was a very important criteria for us to develop this tool and to support cities with implementing heat action planning. So, and based on your experience working with Indian cities, which cooling solutions you think tend to deliver the fastest and the most cost-effective results? And how do you think data can help make the case for scaling them?
Thank you. As I said, this tool helps us to, the risk is perceived, but how do we measure the risk? So tool is helping to convert this perceivable risk into a measurable and investable problem. And as far as solutions are concerned, by and large, greening the cities as the best possible sustainable solutions. I'm speaking from my experience in city of Bhopal, where I've grown up from my childhood. I've seen it was all along, it was trees and trees, and it was very cool city. It was a cool city. It had never had faced that, extreme heat conditions. But over the years, in the name of development and urbanizations, expanding the cities, infrastructure, we have lost the greenery. The green cover has been substantially lost. So first thing I would say that not cutting tree is the best solution. Now we can't afford to cut trees, because planting trees, greening the cities sounds very simple and it's very lucrative. But first, whatever trees are left, we need to keep them survive. We allow them to survive. We allow them to continue to grow. Number one. Second, wherever the spaces are available, where we need to plant trees. Then there are many things, the painting the roof with some white color and black color or whatever, these cool roof solutions. These are all also good solutions. But I don't know what is their efficacy, because I have experienced and I've spoken to many people. They are having very different kind of opinions as far as the cool roof solutions are concerned. I don't know. They may offer some kind of makeshift answer, but they are not the right lifelong sustainable solutions. I also want to talk about the early warning systems, because what does the heat impacts the poor people, the vulnerable section of society, and we have a large number of people in that particular segment where people are directly facing the heat. They have to get out of the home for their work and for their livelihood. If we can provide some kind of informative information or some kind of notification, some alerts that can be given, because most of the people in India are now very tech savvy. Everybody has a smartphone in their pocket and they are all using WhatsApp and whatnot. Some kind of early solutions can be given, that this is the time which the exposure is very high, so that they can sort of time their outings, so that early warning can help lots of life and lots of people getting impacted and getting their ailments, heat stroke kinds of ailments, which are very, very sometimes they get very dangerous and sometimes even fatal also. And in India, we lose a lot of life, I tell you, in extreme heat conditions, because people are dying one here, two there, nobody knows it. But at the end of the year, if you calculate the people dying because of heat conditions are very high. It is higher than any other natural disaster, not even floods, not even earthquakes. Extreme heat conditions is one of the most biggest cause of death as far as natural disaster is concerned. So this is a very big problem. We have the framework, India Cool Cities Action Plan, but how best we can sort of align our cool action plans with the heat action plans. How can we make our cities more cooler, more livable? That is the challenge, and I think this kind of exercise helps us to do that.
Awesome. Thank you a lot, Mr. Tucker. It's very interesting to learn about the different solutions that we can implement, and also we hope that Cool Cities Lab helps support estimation of cooling impact of these different solutions, from planting trees, from cool roof. And it's very important to leverage also the importance of early warning system that are also managed at the different levels. So thank you a lot. And I don't know if you have a time for a last question with us before you leave.
You can ask. I think whatever I wanted to share, I had already maybe mixed up all your three questions in one or two. So if that sounds okay, may I leave the discussion?
Perfect. Thank you again, Mr. Taga. So we'll move to Africa now, and we have a question for you, Doctor. Thank you again, Dr. Kimute. So we know that Nairobi face extreme heat conditions, and we want to learn from you how has Cool Cities Lab data helped you better assess heat risk at the neighborhood level compared to what you had before?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's an excellent question. Before I can answer that question, is just to really thank the WRI team for organizing this meeting, and really to thank sort of the team behind the Cool Cities Lab idea. I think it's a fantastic idea. And thank you for walking us through the lab today as well. I have had the privilege of going through the tool with one of the members of the team, and just to start off is that I have as I've coordinated, I've been part of a team that coordinated the guidance note for EAT action plan in Nairobi City. So we're thinking to develop a EAT action plan for the city. And the initial first step for that was to think of a roadmap, like what would an EAT action plan look like? And so we really outline what are the different steps, what are the sort of the different roles and responsibilities from the different organizations or agencies. So we're looking at sort of an interagency coordination, and we're thinking of what would that look like. In that process, we went to a few cities in the global south to just understand sort of their experiences, their challenges in developing and implementing their EAT action plans. And we use some of those lessons to really develop a very cool a concrete sort of a roadmap for a EAT action plan in Nairobi. And so the remaining step now is the implementation. And also just to mention is that one of the Reynolds, so one of the WRI members, joined one of the stakeholder meetings that we had, and he actually presented the Cool Cities Lab to the participants, and it elicited a lot of interest and reactions and questions, which was really, really good. And so I'm thinking that the lab or the tool will really be very critical in sort of the next phase for the EAT action plan for Nairobi. So in the implementation phase, and really thinking about some of the stuff that I've went into the tool to see how we can use that to work with other stakeholders in sort of implementing the action plan. Because so the tool has the risks. So you've already thought about the risk, the different data that has went into that, looking at exposure, looking at sensitivity, and also like already thinking about the solution. So I think this tool can really support sort of the implementation, in the sense that we could work with WRI and other stakeholders in Nairobi County to think about some of the solutions that have been suggested, and sort of to refine those solutions. So, for example, we could use the tool to as sort of a starting ground for engagement, and to work with other stakeholders to engage on the tool and to see how best we can make use of the tool, and also how we can improve. Because I think also for some of the solutions here, because we have this coordination team or a task force, it would be nice for maybe WRI to join this team, so that when we work together in sort of implementing and starting to think about how concretely do we implement, they can be part of the team, and so that we could use the tool together. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Kimote, for this insight. And we were very excited to collaborate with the City of Nairobi and we support in providing the necessary data for advancing heat action planning. And actually, the development of Cool Cities Lab was strongly informed by the city officials and cities who helped us to shape this product. And now I think about the city of Cape Town, and who was one of the earliest city to connect with us and to support us. So I would to learn from you, Mr. Ferreira. So if you can share us what motivated City of Cape Town to partner with the World Resource Institute to inform the development of Cool Cities Lab, and what specific challenges around urban heat were you hoping to better understand or address through this collaboration?
Sure, thank you very much and good day to everyone. And I'm very glad to see our sister city, Nairobi, on the call as well. Yeah, so just to say, heat-related research and knowledge management is a core component of the city's heat action plan and just our general approach to climate change response. So we use, in general, we use this data to support heat response, heat readiness, and decision making, including monitoring and evaluation. So we have periodic hazard modeling that we undertake to inform infrastructure and operational decision making. But that can often be expensive and can be static in nature. So, and we also understand within our context, we have substantial poverty, inequality, like many other developing cities. So understanding dynamically where heat risk is present remains critical for us. So the WRI tool builds on our existing evidence base, and it helps us understand not just what is, but what can be, which is quite powerful. So it takes, what was great was our internal team and our technical team. So for example, the city's arborists and a recreation and parks team worked with the WRI team to build an understanding of our local context as well. So particularly powerful in the tool is the scenarios that we can show. So showing potential intervention and then showing what the cumulative impact is. So often our documents show and outline we should invest in nature-based solutions, tree planting, thinking about materials, but it's something different to actually show an audience what it looks like. So I thought and I just think that's really important. So and it really gains momentum on this idea around investing in heat mitigation and just showing what is possible. So that's really been fantastic for us in Cape Town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferreira, and thanks for all the city officials and cities that supported us for developing the Cool Cities Lab and providing also our team with the local data and insight that help shape the product to really answer real problems. So, then and also all the cities that were advanced in their heat action planning. So I will move to Nairobi as you are working in the guideline for heat action planning. So, which cooling interventions such as cool roof or urban greening or shade are you prioritizing, and what data or evidence you are using to make those decisions?
Sorry, I'm muted. Yeah, so thank you for the question. I think it's we're starting now to think about. So as I said, we started with this roadmap where we had extensive stakeholder consultation, where we were engaging these stakeholders to think about, to even get from them if they've really thought about heat and heat resilience in the city, and starting to think about what are the solutions. So all the way from heat early warning systems that will be produced by the Met Office, going into sort of the solutions, all the way to the solutions, and thinking what are the stakeholders who will be involved in the entire process of the entire process. And so in terms of what we would want to prioritize is, first we want to sort of do a mapping of exposure and vulnerability to understand. I mean, we already know in our minds where vulnerable people live in the city. For example, we know the informal settlements, the level of sort of population in those settlements. We know the kind of housing or the kind of infrastructure that exists in these parts of the city. And so what we're thinking is that we really want to understand what are the different sort of vulnerability and exposure levels or groups within the city, sort of almost categorizing them and trying to design cooling interventions or solutions that are actually very much tailored to those. And so I'm thinking that and really something like the Cool Cities Lab that I started thinking about these and I looked through the tool and I was trying to understand like what some of the data that has gone in as the input for the tool, particularly for Nairobi. And it'd be nice to think about like sort of maybe enriching the data to make sure that we have something that really speaks to the sort of the realities of Nairobi in a more concrete way. And so I think that's the plan. And so we are thinking about sort of informal settlements, also thinking about outdoor workers, whether they have shades, especially maybe even like at the bus stops, thinking about cool roofs for marketplaces where we still have very open markets and very exposed markets, and it can be very hot during hot seasons, especially for vendors who spend almost the entire day there trying to earn a living. And so it's this kind. So we haven't started looking at sort of the data, and that's the process that we're going into now. So when I'm talking about the implementation, is really looking at the data itself, doing the mapping itself, utilizing tools like this to see how we can sort of integrate and complement to make sure that we have information that can help us design these interventions that would really, really serve the needs of the people in the city.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kimoti, for this answer. And yeah, it's very important to make sure that the solutions are relevant and customized to the communities and to the context. And this is why we try to also provide a variety of solutions and the catalog solution, and then find a way to estimate their impact. So question to Mr. Ferreira, since collaborating with WRI on using Cool Cities Lab data and accessing it, what are the most valuable insights you have gained in Cape Town? And did this data influence your choice in specific cooling interventions?
Sure, thank you. And maybe just to say the beauty of nature-based solutions are that it doesn't just respond to heat, it also responds to flooding and other issues as well, and creates better places to live in. So I just want to emphasize that we're driving multiple co-benefits. So I think that what is important is that these simulations help us quantify the actual temperature reductions, turning the analysis that we often have, but into specific prioritization and even funding cases within the city. So particularly in areas with high exposure and low canopy areas, for example. But I do need to emphasize, unlike Nairobi and a few other cities, Cape Town is not a particularly tree-friendly city. So it really matters where, in terms of our climatic conditions. So it's one thing to plant a tree but to keep it alive. So this idea is what is great is it's not just about the city providing trees, etc. It's that these tools can potentially be used for partners, etc. As well. And while this tool might not replace sort of technical tree planting plans, they're able to put into place for various stakeholders what is possible. It provides an integrated metropolitan level view, which is often missing if you have specific area plans. And again, it's almost the baseline of possibility, which is fantastic. Then just to say that, of course, quantifying the expected cooling and equity benefits upfront can help with both capital planning, so both from the public and private sector, to, for example, contribute to this idea of tree-lined corridors, shaded interchanges, reflective porous material, spray parks, even cooling spaces as we roll these out across the city, so that we can really start to reduce these heat islands and obviously reduce risk for those that are most vulnerable.
Thank you, Mr. Ferreira, and agree that one of the functionality that we wanted to have in Cool Cities Lab is capacity to simulate the cooling impact and the cooling potential of different solutions, and that can help drive decision making. And we hope that we can collect more use cases from other cities and also from the city of Cape Town, and how we can use to estimate impact of other solutions. And so we are running out of time. So as we want to have also some time for the QA at the end, so we will ask you please to have like very short answer to those two last questions. So one for you, Dr. Kimote. So what are the advice that you would give to other Kenyan cities that they are just beginning their heat risk assessment journey?
Yeah, so actually when we started to think about developing this heat action plan for Nairobi, we wanted to use this as sort of the like a pilot, like almost like a pilot case for other cities in the country. Before we even thought of doing this, we first did an analysis of trying to understand, to define what an heat wave would look like in these cities. Because you understand in most cities in Africa, heat wave definitions are not sort of defined or established. And actually, most Met officers do not issue heat early warnings or advisories, particularly those that are linked to impact. So most of them would say, okay, we're going to experience 32 degrees next week for like 3 days, and then we have another break, and then we have another 30 degrees for another 2 days, which I mean, it's good information, but I don't think it can be used for people who don't understand what the 32 degrees would mean for a city. And so what made me and the team I was working with to really start thinking about an heat action plan for Nairobi is that when we started looking at the data and trying to play with different thresholds to understand what would an heat wave look like in these cities, we found out that with some of the definitions that we used and some of the heat wave events that we defined based on these different thresholds, is that for particular period, for some particular hot periods of the year, particularly in Nairobi, is March, February, and January, but particularly January and February and some part of December, is that we found that there were elevated cases of hospitalizations, admissions, and mortalities. And it's not just in Nairobi. So we looked at 3 cities. We looked at Kisumu, Mombasa, and Nairobi. And it started to prompt the debate around really thinking of heat early warnings, thinking about heat awareness, sensitization with health practitioners. So we started thinking about like having a broader discussion around this issue, and we thought maybe a good way is to really think about what would that mean for Nairobi. And so we started to have these stakeholder coordinations to start thinking about a guidance note for a heat action plan. And the plan is to actually roll that to other cities in the country. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Kimote. And final question for you, Mr. Ferreira. So, you know that in the tool we have 2 other South African cities. We have Durban, we have Johannesburg, and I want to know how is your work on urban heat in Cape Town helping other South African cities struggling with the same issues with urban heat?
Thank you so much. And again, potentially not surprising to the audience, but of course, South Africa and other developing cities are going to face the brunt of climate impact as we move on, and often don't have access to the funding and resources to do so. But what is encouraging is that it's the global South, including India and other African cities, that is leading the way in terms of practical solutions aimed at particularly those that are most vulnerable. So as was mentioned, intervening in terms of outdoor workers, practical nature-based solutions, etc., is important. And then there's collective challenges. For example, in South Africa, we have improved like nationally available mortality and morbidity data, unlocking that through partnership, working in partnership with the South African Weather Service, for example. So there's collective data challenges that we can overcome, and then tapping into each other's networks. So of course WRI, but then also the Chief Heat Officer network that I'm participating in, that we become representatives of our fellow cities as well. And so I can't say that they would necessarily learn so much from us, but what is wonderful is because we have the same very similar socioeconomic issues and conditions, we are able to test different solutions and again come back to the table and learn from each other. And of course, what is exciting is, we can talk about heat solutions, etc., but it's also just in general to improve people's quality of life, improve the experience that people have in our cities. And again, people should experience this as comfort, safety, and dignity at the end of the day. So it's about saving lives, livelihoods, and just creating better cities. And looking forward to working with WRI and our fellow cities as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferreira, and thank you, Dr. Kimbute, for your both honest answer, and thank you for all the panelists. So it's really great to hear about your advice and your experience with urban heat in your different countries and cities. So I would like to share a couple of thoughts related to this discussion. So I think both of you and also Mr. Takar emphasized the importance of coordination between different departments and collaborate together to advance in heat action planning. It's important to have the data, but it's important to have this capacity to estimate what will change if I implement a solution. So this simulation is very important to advance heat action planning. And also for an implementation purpose, it's good to start with a pilot case, start small, and then you can scale to other interventions. So this data is very relevant, very important, and we hope that Cool Cities Lab will provide this data, but it's important to convert this into insight to accelerate actions and investment in cooling infrastructure. And we hope that we are trying to achieve this with Cool Cities Lab. So thank you so much. Really great to hear from you. And back to you, Jorab.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Saif. Thank you so much to our panelists, Dr. Kimutai, Mr. Albert Ferreira. We really appreciate your preparation to share thoughtfully and honestly with us. And as Saif wrapped up and already provided some thoughts on your interventions, I'm not going to do that myself. I'm going to move us straight into the live Q&A section. We don't have a lot of time here because we've had such rich discussions already, but I do want to try and make sure that we get to one question for Dr. Joyce and one question for Mr. Ferreira. So let me just look at my document that my colleagues are populating from the questions that I've put in, that our attendees have put into the Q&A box. I have a question for you first, Albert. The question in the chat is about how this kind of spatial data can support early warning systems and responses to acute extreme heat events. So can you comment on how expanded access to geospatial data supports planning for heat emergencies? Maybe giving us an example from the city of Cape Town.
Sure. So how I would see this particular tool together with all of the other risk analysis that we have is almost a risk layering approach that we take in the city of Cape Town. So we would have this kind of base level information, which really gives us a lay of the land in terms of where people are at risk in general, but then layering that with early warning systems. So for example, in the city of Cape Town, we're investigating a real-time heat monitoring network. So it's a distributed network of heat and potentially also air quality monitoring devices across the city, so we can have a real-time indication of where risk is, and then combining that with a localized mortality and morbidity data. And a combination of those two forces gives us, then we're able to make more informed local heat threshold recommendations. And then, based on that, more nuanced risk notification can be sent out to residents. But importantly, and with the existing information that we have, we can already plan where our operational staff, etc., should deploy or where there might be more risks. And that's why we, for example, as a practical matter, have started looking at creating what we refer to as cool spaces, particularly in neighborhoods where it's difficult in people's own homes to have cooling options. So that, for example, is practical things like libraries, parks, and potentially in the future private facilities as well that are air conditioned and passively cooled, so that people can practically access cooler spaces during heat waves and high heat days.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Albert. Dr. Joyce, I'm coming to you with one question, and then I think we're going to have to close the Q&A. So I'm going to encourage my colleagues to answer as many of the remaining questions in writing as possible. Dr. Joyce, the question for you is from an attendee who's from a city in Mozambique. The question is, do you have any evidence or insights from Kenyan cities on the pros and cons of these urban interventions after implementation based on longer term monitoring that you can share?
So we haven't really implemented these cooling solutions yet, as I said. I think we're still in the stage of, so we just, as I said, we just finalized the guidelines for the city of Nairobi. And we launched that guidelines early this month. And we're going into the next phase of implementation. As I said in my presentation before, is that this is the phase where we're coming together now to think about sort of the solutions that we're going to be installing in the city or implementing in the city, the different interventions, which part of the city, who needs what intervention, and what is the feasibility of that. Also, what is sort of the economic viability or sustainability of having this. So we're having these sort of interagencies. As I said, we have a task force that's trying to bring sort of to coordinate these activities and these conversations to make sure that we have a good way forward. So just to answer that question is that I'm not in a position for now to say like what has worked and what hasn't worked for Nairobi, but I hope to share those in a very near future.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joyce. Thanks for sharing.
And
Thanks for
maybe
being
Albert
honest also,
has.
right? That's what I was going to do.
I was just going to say maybe Albert
and
has some lessons.
Yes, Albert, if you'd like to comment on this, feel free.
Sorry, I just missed the question, the short question part. Just repeat that.
Yeah, no, the question is, do we have any insights on the pros and cons of urban interventions that have been implemented to date based on longer term monitoring that we can share with any other cities on the line here?
Sure, we do have. I also want to point out that we also need to consider maladaptation. And that's where this issue, and I see some of the questions that are currently there around maintenance. Nature-based solutions, while delivering a lot of co-benefits, also require careful management, etc. So that what comes out, and there was powerful examples of nature-based solutions from Nairobi, is how do we get community partnership involved here? That it's not, for example, a one-way conversation or provision from the state side. Sometimes initial capital investment is important, but how do we build management models that truly works with communities and creates that sort of shared ownership of space? And that's really critical moving forward. So I would say our lessons is delivering is one thing, maintaining and keeping it in place is where we really require community partnerships.
Thank you, Albert. Thanks also for bringing up the point about maladaptation. I think we often focus too much on the lessons learned in terms of what was positive, what worked, but it's also equally important to learn about what didn't work so that we can avoid those kinds of mistakes. So thank you, both of you. I'm sorry that we couldn't get through more questions. I'm sorry that I shortchanged my own colleagues, Saif and Ruth. There are many questions. There's a robust discussion in the Q&A box, but we simply don't have time to attend to them. So I'm going to ask my colleagues one more time to please answer as many as you can in the remaining minutes here. And I'm going to move us on to the final segment of this webinar, which is the closing remarks. So I'm pleased to hand over to my colleague, Rogier van den Berg, who is the Global Director for World Resources Institute's Cities Program. Rogier, you're going to have the final word, which means all the colleagues online, thank you so much for joining us. You won't hear from me again. Rogier has the final word, and so over to you, Rogier. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for joining today, and thank you very much for the speakers for incredibly rich discussion. And I think many of us and also many online that are confronted with heat see that we are really moving from understanding to actual practical implementation. And I think what I really took away from this conversation is that the Cool Cities Lab, and especially the applications in Cape Town, Nairobi, and Bhopal, show that it matters. You know, what is the intervention? Where is the intervention? What's the scale of the intervention? And that actually with those experiences and with the analytics, you can have the biggest bang for the buck, the most positive possible impact. I also think that the last part of the conversation was very interesting. So how do we actually monitor over time? And these are all things that come together with Cool Cities Lab, with the analytics, but also with the interaction with the cities that actually use the tool and have experience with on the ground implementation. So for me, working in the city space for a long time, it's very interesting now to see the shift towards implementation and action. And thanks once more for the great panelists for showcasing how they do that in their cities. I want to reinforce World Resources Institute's commitment to this. For us, this is so important because the cities that we work with and the cities that we know are confronted. And for us, it is a climate and health issue. So we really bring those two together. And Albert already talked about mortality, morbidity data, and how reducing heat can really create more healthier cities, more pleasant cities to live in. For us, it's important to bring the research and policy dimension together with real action on the ground. And it's really all about prioritizing equity in cities, because as we know, the most vulnerable are also the most vulnerable to heat stress. Thank you very much for our partnerships with the United Nations Environment Programme. We are a proud partner of the Beat the Heat initiative, and I'm looking forward to scale solutions together. For me, the Cool Cities Lab is really a practical platform to turn analytics into action. It really helps cities to assess risk, to prioritize intervention, and to make the case for investment. And this is not something that we started yesterday, right? This work on the platform and our heat-related work started 3 years ago. So we were building on a kind of rich body of knowledge built over the last 3 years. Thanks everybody for joining. My call to action for you is really to actively use the platform. Please sign up for the Cool Cities Lab email in order to receive updates and to stay engaged. And really, we are looking for your input. Please suggest cities that you want us to include and why those cities matter. And for us, that's very important because this is a demand-driven network. As I said, 3 years ago, we started with a global survey of users and cities on what they exactly need. So we want more of that. So let us know your views, let us know your experiences, and that can help us, WRI, to convince partners and the private sector, donors and financiers to help us with supporting cities in their solutions. I really want to thank Joyce from Nairobi, Albert from Cape Town, and Lokendra from Madhya Pradesh to share their experiences, because your work, your engagement, and your experience shows how we can move from analytics, from understanding to action, and also how we use the Cool Cities Lab tool in other cities. So thanks for being here. We are looking forward to scaling access to Cool Cities Lab analytics. And of course, for that, we need resources. So any donors here on the call or any friends and partners that want to work with us on this, you're kindly invited. I want to thank Google.org and Google Research, because without you, this has not been possible. And your generous support and your thought partnership has been crucial to the success of where we are right now. Thank you to the WRI team for organizing and delivering these webinars. You can get a lot of work done, I experience right now, in a little bit over an hour. So thanks for doing all the work to make this happen. And I really want to thank all the cities and practitioners who joined. So the challenges around heat, and we all know, are really significant, but I'm also getting energized by this conversation because I also see that the solutions are within reach. We are looking forward for continued collaboration, real-world impact on urban heat. Thank you very much for joining this webinar.